Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Queens Borough Cabinet meeting this morning. I'm going to hop right into it. On Tuesday, April 6th, legislative leaders made the announcement that an agreement was made on the budget for the 2022 fiscal year. The budget legislation was then passed the next morning on Wednesday, April 7th. The bill includes funds for rent relief, small business, education, and the legalization of mobilized sports betting and marijuana. Here to give us a full report on the bill is Senate Deputy Majority Leader Michael Gianaris. Welcome, Mike, and thank you for all your hard work in the state Senate this year. I know Queens is really going to reap some big benefits because of the work you've done and many of our colleagues from across the state Senate and Assembly. So thank you for your leadership, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President. Let me just begin by thanking you and everyone on this call, because I know many of the folks on here for many years, and they are the fabric of our communities and people that have worked really hard for a very long time to get Queens to the place where everybody wants to come here now. Right, so we appreciate you very much. On the budget, we're very excited about it. This was a very unique budget for us. There's a lot of things in here that many of us have been trying to get done for quite a long time, and I'll talk about some of them in specific in a bit, but we were able to actually do it this year, and it was a confluence of a lot of different factors. I like to think that the Senate flipping to our control, putting someone from Queens in the top leadership spot. As you all know, I'm the deputy leader, I'm the number 2 in the Senate and the top ranking senator from New York City, and we were able to really move the center of power of the Senate from the suburbs and upstate to downstate to Westchester, where our leader Andre Stewart Cousins is from, and of course Queens, where I'm proud to have been born and continue to live. But what those priorities are numerous, and I'm trying to think, what do I want to get at, the revenue first or the spending first? But we actually have taken care of a lot of priorities by 2 factors predominantly. One is federal aid that's coming in as a result of the COVID pandemic and the stimulus that they are trying to do. There's a lot of money coming into the state that way, about $12 billion in unrestricted aid. The problem with that is it's a one-time deal, so we'll get that money. If we spend it on something that's supposed to continue, we're going to have to find ways to continue to fund it beyond the 1 year. And so what we did is also raise taxes on the wealthy. And so there's been a lot of conversation about that. And I want to make one thing very, very clear. If someone is not making $1 million or more per year in income, they will not see a tax hike. In fact, most people will see a tax cut. If you're making $300,000 or less, roughly speaking, you should be getting a tax cut on your income taxes this year. And so we call it a millionaire's tax, but that's not even accurate, because you're much more than a millionaire if you're making $1 million per year. Think about it that way, right? So these are very, very wealthy people that all the data indicates one way or another, they got even richer during the last year, while so many people were out of work or suffering or having a rough time. And so we thought it was appropriate to ask them to help fund the recovery, help fund some of these priorities, and do it in a way that is sustainable and allows us to continue the spending priorities that we have. So what are those? First and foremost, education. I know a lot of people have been focused on fully funding our schools. There was a court decision almost 15 years ago that said the way we fund our schools is unconstitutional. We haven't been providing enough funding to get our public schools where they should be. We had years ago a school by school breakdown, and that's in the process of being assembled again for a more current look at it. But I remember Long Island City High School, which was my alma mater, was owed $6 million alone. And that's pretty typical of a lot of the schools that we have. So we should be seeing now millions of dollars pumping into our schools and into the classroom. We made a 3-year plan to satisfy that court requirement. And so we added $1.4 billion in public school aid this year, on top of the normal aid that flows, on the way to about a $4.5 billion total funding package over 3 years, which is what would satisfy those legal requirements that were imposed a while ago and were just ignored by the state, unfortunately. Then when we turn to some COVID-specific relief efforts, near and dear to my heart has always been the issue of affordable housing. It was important to me before the pandemic, but it's become an exacerbated problem since then. And so we have rent relief in the form of $2.3 billion, I think. Estimates are that that would satisfy all the rent arrears over the last year. Tenants still have to apply and show hardship, which a lot of us were hoping would be a little bit easier to apply than the final product. But nonetheless, with the help of many of our offices, including yours, we're hopeful that tenants in need will avail themselves of those dollars. We don't want a repeat of what happened in the fall, where we allocated $100 million and only 40 million went out the door, or whatever the number was. And so we have made the process easier since then. I don't know that it's easy enough. So we all have our work cut out for us to make sure that that money gets to the people who need it. And it's a solution that should be a good one for our small landlords as well and homeowners, because ultimately they will be getting made whole. If this money flows, the rent gets paid, they get paid, they pay their bills, and we can hopefully get ourselves back on the road to recovery faster and with minimal displacement and evictions. I also had a proposal that was mine that I'm proud of, that we still have some work to do on, to take a lot of the distressed properties that are on the market now, hotels, commercial properties, et cetera, that have endured so much economic suffering over the last year that they are up for sale. And the thought would be, let's take some resources, purchase these properties, and then give them to nonprofit affordable housing developers to turn it into supportive housing, housing for the formerly homeless, et cetera. So we ended up allocating $100 million towards that effort, but we did not agree on the programmatic language. So we have to go back before the session's over in June and put some meat on the bones of how that money is going to get spent. And so that's going to take up a large part of my energies over the next 2 months before we adjourn for the year. Small businesses, I will also mention, and I do want to open up for questions. I don't want to take too long just going through all this, but small businesses are getting a significant amount of relief federally, but we wanted to make sure we helped in addition to that, and for those who maybe don't qualify for various reasons for federal aid. And so we allocated $1 billion in state aid for our small businesses, 800 million in grants, and 200 million in tax credits that the Empire State Development Corp will come up with an application for in the next couple of weeks. And that should go a long way towards helping our businesses that many of them have unfortunately already closed, but the ones that are still around, we want to keep them open and keep them as part of the fabric of our communities. Restaurants, I should point out, because that's a lot of where the pain was because of the closures. Restaurants, in addition to being able to access the state money, are eligible for about $2.3 billion in federal aid that's restaurant specific coming into New York. So there's a lot of money flowing right now. And I think a big part of what my office, and I'm sure our community boards and the borough president's office will be doing in the next few months, is helping applicants navigate all of this so that they get access to the monies that they are qualified to receive. And hopefully within a few months, when everyone's vaccinated, we can get ourselves back to where we were over a year ago. And that's, I think, everybody's goal right now. P.S. I'm getting my second shot on Friday, so I'm almost fully vaxxed myself. Looking forward to getting that behind me so we can have a little more safety and get a little bit more back to normal. So I'm sure you're all very knowledgeable and are doing that yourselves, but I encourage everyone to get vaxxed. The borough president and I were in a Mets promo together that I was fortunate enough to be at opening day because I'm a season ticket holder. And I saw all of us on the big screen encouraging people to get vaccinated. So that's an important thing for all of us to do. I could go on. There's a lot more in this budget. The BP mentioned marijuana legalization. That was technically not in the budget. It was a separate bill, but we did do that as well. And that should be fully implemented. I think within a year is the effective date of the retail sale. So we should see that starting to produce some revenue as well. And there's a lot more in there. And if there's specific questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. But I think that's a pretty good summary of where we're at so far.
Thank you so much. Wow. It's a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. Coming out of this pandemic, we talked about not going back to just where we were, but coming out better. And it's evident that we're certainly moving in a better direction. I just wanted to, before I go to questions from the district managers, just touch on, so I know we talk about rental assistance. Where do homeowners sort of fit in here as well? Because I know we're going to get a lot of questions about homeowners who, can't pay their mortgage or may be behind. So where are we at there?
Well, the biggest way they're going to be helped is by having the rent that's owed to them paid. And so if we help the tenants access the money we talked about, that money is going to end up in the pockets of the landlords who are owed the rent. And that's the purpose of the rental assistance, is to pay the rent. It's not, a tenant can't take that money and then go buy, a television with it. They have to pay that rent. That's the entire purpose of it. So every penny of that 2.3 billion that goes out the door will end up with the landlords who are owed rent. And so that will hopefully serve as a resource for them to pay their mortgages, utilities, et cetera. There are some homeowner specific programs in addition to that. And I don't have those at the tip of my fingers, but I'm happy to follow up and get you that. But I think the biggest help to homeowners is going to be in the form of getting the owed rent paid.
Right. Well, I just wanted to mention that because I think, based on where we were at in 2008, we're going to start to see this mortgage crisis balloon a little bit more too. So I just want us to also stay, connected on that as well. And then just the last question I had before I turn it over was on the small business relief. And, we worked with the Mets and launched the Small Business Queens grant, which has really been a big success. But one of the things we did, as you alluded to, was focus in on many of the businesses that were ineligible for the PPP loans and federal assistance. So are you looking at that from an equity lens too, or how are we going to make sure?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. The answer is definitely yes. There's a preference on the state aid. You just reminded me of a big thing I left out, which I'll touch on too. But there's a preference in the state aid for applicants that were ineligible for federal assistance. So the idea is if people are getting aid from the federal government, then hopefully that takes care of at least part of their need. But for those that don't have access to it at all, we wanted the state aid to be there for them. So yes, people that weren't eligible for PPP or some of the other programs would have priority on the state grants. And I didn't mention excluded workers. I don't know how I forgot that, which is a big thing that we did. Speaking of people that were ineligible for federal aid, there were many thousands of people who lost work, who were not eligible for federal assistance, the additional federal unemployment benefits, among other things. And so we set up a $2.1 billion state program for people who were out of work, suffered hardship, but were not able to access federal assistance. And so that was a very big thing, especially for us in Queens, where we have so many immigrants, many of whom are undocumented, who were working for at least part of the pandemic to help us get through. And when I was saying to someone when we were debating this proposal on the Senate floor, I said, when you guys are all complaining, but these are the people when you were sitting home comfortable in your house and you're ordering food and they were the ones bringing it to you, right? So you can't now say all of a sudden you don't want to help those folks. And by the way, it's not like, I assure you, every dollar that that an excluded worker is getting is going right back into the economy. They're buying groceries or paying their rent or doing things that end up circulating that money right back into the local economy. So it was an important thing to do. I think it's going to help a tremendous amount of people.
Right, perfect. I'll open it up for questions. I see Florence, CB1.
It's my board.
Good morning, Senator Gianaris. It's good to see you. Thank you for all you do for our district. We greatly appreciate all your efforts, and your team is remarkable. You have a staff that works like it's just, there's no tomorrow. Thank you for that. You made a statement, small business federal aid assistance is $1 billion and 800 million in grants. What was the 200 for? The 200
tax
million?
credits, and that's state assistance, not federal. The federal's on top of that. So
Good,
yeah, the 200 is in the form of tax credits.
That's all I needed. Thank you very much, sir.
Any other questions for Senator Gianaris? I mean, I got a million, but James, did I see you? Oh, okay, Frank. CB6.
Thank you, Senator. You can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Yes? Great. Thanks, Senator. I haven't seen you in a while. Appreciate all your work up there in Albany, along with my friend Senator Joe Dabo. So I just want to say we are ecstatic here. I haven't even told my board yet about the monies that are coming down for education. It's been 15 years that we've been fighting for that bill. We've been horribly under budgeted throughout all the districts, in Queens in particular. There are so many needs here that it's unbelievable. But finally, now the only thing I didn't get, when the money comes down, is this coming down in 2 years or 3 years? How are they working that out?
It's a phase in over 3 years. So the total need was
3 years.
4.5 billion to satisfy the CFE requirements. And we're doing 1.5 billion roughly each year for the next 3 years in additional aid.
Okay.
So this first year will be 1/3 of it, and then another third next year, and then another third the year after that.
That is excellent. That is excellent. As you know, I rep part of the Rockaways and up here in Forest Hills and Rego Park. So I'll certainly bring that back to the CECs over there. I'm sure they'll be here. They're ecstatic that the people I know already who've heard about this. So thank you again for that effort. I really do appreciate it on behalf of all the kids in the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I almost couldn't believe it when we got it done. I mean, I've been around, longer than I'd like to admit in public office, but I've been fighting this fight for my first days there. And it was frustrating when you have a court telling you have to do it, and we still weren't doing it. To actually get it done this year is remarkable. I like to say when people complain about the taxes, even though, as I mentioned, most of the people we deal with are not going to be affected by it at all. But that's where the money's going. Like, we have to do that to fund our schools. And so we're really proud that we got that done.
But we're glad
Awesome. Thank you.
people are paying their fair share.
Yeah.
About time. Why are we paying more taxes than millionaires? It's ridiculous. Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna go to James from CB9.
Good morning, Senator. How are you? Thanks for all you
I'm
do
doing
up
great.
in Albany. Do you know the time frame for when the small business application will be issued by the Empire State Corporation?
Yeah, we were told, we didn't get anything too specific. We were told it's a matter of weeks for them to get it up and running. So hopefully, less than a month, I would hope, but we'll be on them. I assure you, there's just such need that if they wait too long, it's not going to be that helpful. We're losing businesses by the day.
Thank you, sir.
Marie, CB8.
Thank you, Senator. What is being done to ensure that all the businesses get that information? A lot of times when there's money out there, certain businesses are very quick and they have contacts able to get through, but then some of other businesses are not so quick to get the information, and sometimes they miss out on very needed funds to keep them afloat.
Yeah, that's a great question. We just have to educate. I have a small business committee that I have here in Western Queens with a lot of our businesses, and they're helping disseminate the information. I'm sure the borough president's going to embark in a aggressive effort to let our businesses know this is there. And I think, frankly, we'd rely on you all, the community boards too, but we have to let them know. And hopefully the agencies that are administering will also notify them. But my office is going to spend much of the next several months, I think, doing exactly that. It's going to be a big priority for us, that and the tenant assistance, letting people know that the money's there for them.
Will there be a list of information or information that they're required to have to apply for these things, so we can put it out there for them so that when the time comes, they're already ready, they have all their ducks in a row and just put in the application?
Yeah, we have some broad strokes that were in the law that we just passed, but I think we're all waiting for Empire State Development to give us the specific regulations and applications, and that'll really kickstart the whole thing. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have that, priority goes to those who do not receive any federal aid. Other than that, the parameters we set out are pretty broad. It's just showing that you had hardship as a result of the pandemic. I think every business in Queens can show that pretty easily, just by looking at revenues compared to the year prior or whatever proof the ESDC ends up requiring. But we don't know exactly what paperwork is needed until they give us the applications.
And let me add, we did the Queens
Wonderful.
Small Business Grant, and one of the things I attribute to its success so far, and I think over 680 businesses have received the grant, was working with nonprofit partners. So I hope that Empire State embarks on working with some of these local orgs, because they really do have a sense of what's going on in their neighborhoods. Bids and others should be a part of that conversation. So thank you for that. I have another question. I think Gary had a question, CB5. Unmute yourself, Gary.
Senator, thanks for spending your valuable time to be with us and for all the good you've done up in Albany. I'm concerned about all the children and the teenagers who probably have fallen behind in what one might consider to be grade level in their subjects. How much of a focus will there be on those students who have fallen behind to help them with tutoring after school and the other help that they may need to get better back on track?
I share your concern, and I think it's a great need that we have, Gary. That's a level of administration that's more granular than we would deal with at the legislative level. So I know our new schools commission chancellor, I should say, has Queens roots also. So I think she's going to be sensitive to that, but we should really impose on the individual schools and the administration up to the chancellor level to get that done. But that's not something we would necessarily mandate legislatively.
Good news is the mayor is announcing that there'll actually be, and it's not going to be for everyone, but this is, I guess he's going to announce it this morning on there being school offered, I think throughout the summer for K-8 at least. So that application process looks like it's going to open up April 26th. So I look forward to sending my own son this summer, God willing, he gets accepted. But that'll be a way for some of our children, I feel like, to catch up who, you know, unfortunately had to be on their tablets all year. Although my son,
how does he feel about summer school, VP?
You know, my parents didn't give me choices in life, and I'm gonna give him one. Unless Marie wants to babysit, she's my neighbor. So. But I think she's busy. We're sending him back for educational purposes, all right?
Absolutely.
Well, D3 is wonderful. I wouldn't mind babysitting. But I think you can learn a lot more from the teachers, and that's a good thing.
He did get the principal's award this week. Okay, but moving right along. Any other questions? All right, we promised we would get you off by 10, and I want to thank you. As you know, when we do these things, we're very straightforward and want to get people off and not waste time and get that information out. So we look forward to continuing to work with you. I'm also very interested in ensuring, and I want to touch on marijuana because, listen, I know some folks are for it, against it. But, you know, I love the fact that we're looking at it from an equity lens, and I want to make sure that that process, you know, at least my office can play some sort of role of ensuring that, you know, many of our residents who've been most impacted by arrest, I could talk about the 105th precinct, which led the city for over a decade. We want to make sure that these young men and women who unfortunately had their lives ruined to a great degree off of a low-level marijuana offense, or
and that fight is why it took so long to get done. We would have gotten this done a couple of years ago, except the governor didn't want to focus as much on that. He just wanted the money into the general budget. We fought successfully this year to get the money allocated to communities that that suffered under criminalization. So I agree with you on that.
Very grateful.
And you know what? I can't say goodbye without saying hello to Jonathan Gasca. He's been around forever, man. I remember him when I worked for Mario Cuomo. He was around. So. Keep up the good work, Jonathan.
He has a few more grays.
Yeah, just
all right.
a lot less hair than what I do have is gray. So.
He can attribute some of those grays to me, probably.
Yeah, just a few. It's more my daughters, actually.
Well, thank you, Senator Gianaris, for joining us. Enjoy your day. Look forward to continued work and partnership with you.
Thanks so much for all you do, and to all of you, really appreciate you very much. As a former community board member, I value your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.